Good.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. My name is Mark Marzullo. I'm the chairman of the board. I will start with a roll call for the town board representatives. Mr. Rosito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbey.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
Mr. Maurizio.
Here.
Cindy Chamberlain, planning board clerk.
Yes.
There's a note, Mark Parrish, our engineer, is on vacation and won't be with us tonight. Neil Germain, our attorney.
Here.
Stephen Procopio, director of codes.
Present.
Nancy White, town board member and our liaison.
Here.
And Judy Boyke, other town board member who normally is in attendance with us, is working. She may show up late. With that, would you please join us in the pledge? Mr. Rosito, would you please lead us off?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as always, the planning board will accept public comment on any active application currently before the board. Due to the fact that this meeting is being conducted virtually, those comments should be submitted in writing to the zoning and planning office. That can be done via email, fax, or postal service. And the information for that contact information is on the town website. With that, we will go to the approval of the meeting minutes from July 15th. Everybody's had a chance to review. Any comments? We have a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
There's Mr. Rosito. We have a second?
Yes. Second.
Second by Mr. Abbey. Roll call. Mr. Rosito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbey.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes, motion is passed. First item on the agenda is the opening of a public hearing for the lands of Champaign, property at 7398 State Route 31. This is a two-lot subdivision, and the applicant is Brian Tyler. And basically all we're doing this evening is opening the public hearing, and I will do that. Public comment should be again submitted via email, fax, or postal service, again to the planning and zoning office. And that information, that probably should be, we should probably receive that the day before our next meeting.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Up to them.
So that information should be provided to us by the 18th of this month. Any comments from the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. This is a continuation of a public hearing for Syracuse Label Company. This is the property at Coswell Street. This is a two-lot subdivision. We had opened the public hearing. We had closed the public hearing at this point. Steve, I assume you received no information. I have not seen anything. No comments?
No, we have not received any.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
No. I'm all set.
I'm sorry, I'll go through a roll call. Mr. Rosito, any comments?
No.
Mr. Abbey, anything?
All set, thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
Comment.
Mr. Bloss?
I'm all set.
Mr. Maurizio?
I'm all set.
We need a seeker?
Yes, we do. I just had one question for Steve. Do we have park fees here, $500 a lot?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, we would need a seeker motion.
Thank you. Joe, would you present our standard seeker, please?
Yes, I propose our standard seeker, and that's a form of motion.
Do we have a second?
Second by Snyder.
Roll call, Mr. Rosito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbey.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Seeker is passed. Neil, could you propose a motion for approval?
Yes. You're going to move for the adoption of a resolution approving the application known as minor subdivision preliminary and final plan Syracuse Label Co. Coswell Street, tax map number 57-239, 2 lots. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following. 1, the applicant is hereby advised that pursuant to section 185 subsection, or 6, subsection F of the code, the applicant has 90 days from the approval to file a map. If the applicant misses the 90-day filing deadline, this approval will have expired. 2, park fees are due in the amount of $500 per lot, or in this case, $1,000. These fees shall be paid prior to submitting of the map to the chairman for signature. And finally, the applicant is further notified that the chairman of the planning board may delay signing of the final map until the chairman verifies that the applicant has executed any and all necessary agreements with the town and that a security or undertakings are in place, if any.
That's in the form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bloss.
Yes. True.
Mr. Rossito,
Yes.
Mr. Abbey,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Bloss,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion passes. On to the next agenda item. This is for sketch plan review for property at 6083 State Route 31, commercial lawn and landscape. This is a proposed pole barn addition in the back. And the applicant, I don't have their name. Is the applicant here?
I'm representing the applicant, Tim Coyer, Iannuzi and Romans.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
Go ahead, give us a little background on what's going on.
Okay, basically this property is located at 6083 Route 30, existing commercial lawn and landscape. I'm going to attempt to share my screen with everyone so that they can see the map. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So commercial lawn and landscapes located at 83 Route 31. It's located on the north side of Route 31. There's an existing, looks like what would be an old residential built house out front here where they have their office operations going on. They have a long asphalt drive that goes into the back of the property. And right now there's an existing metal pole barn back here. They're looking to put a 40 by 52 cold storage a warehouse building addition to this pole barn, along with a roof overhang on the south side of that building. What they're looking to do is put some of the outdoor store equipment that they have in there. They have some trucks and forklifts and stuff, and some equipment that they want to store inside the building to get it out of the weather and clean up the site. There's 2 existing storage containers that are located on the west side of the building. They're going to move those storage containers up here on the north side of this salt shed. They're going to add some wall packs. I believe we submitted the architecturals and everything. Pretty straightforward. No new utilities, no new signage, just the addition and the overhang on the building. Right now they have roughly 10 employees. They have parking in the back here for some of the employees that work in the field. And there's about 10 parking spots they're going to stripe down here near the building for a few employees that actually work in the building and customers that come to the site.
Thank you, Tim. We'll go to questions from the board at this point. Mr. Rossito,
No.
Mr. Abbey,
Just double check. I assume that zoning is commercial all the way to the back.
I didn't catch that.
I didn't hear you, Chuck.
Is that the zoning commercial all the way back to the rear of that property?
It's actually a good catch, Mr. Abbey. There is the zoning line is right here that kind of splits the general commercial in the front.
Okay, now I see a dotted line there. Okay, so we're staying just south of that.
Yep.
The new building, is that going to be attached to the old building?
The new building is going to be, here's right here. This unshaded portion is the building right here. I'll zoom in a bit here. So here's the existing building right here.
Yes.
This is the new proposed addition. And here's the proposed roof overhang.
So aesthetically, will the buildings kind of match?
Yes, they're going to match the existing building. Yep.
Not that you can see them from the road by any means anyway.
No, there's some heavy trees and brush down through here in this area, so you really can't I can show you what it looks like. So here's the existing residential building out here with the driveway. You can see the existing metal building back here. And the addition is basically going here.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Snyder?
I don't have any comments at this time. It looks good so far.
Mr. Bloss?
The only, I'd like to, for my own clarification, it appears that the addition of one of the new buildings is 2 feet into the agricultural portion of that property. Is that an issue or that's not a concern?
And I'll let Neil answer this, but I don't believe it's a concern because it's an allowed use in agricultural district, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay, okay, Robert, or Neil. Yep, that answers my question.
Mike, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Jim, I'm just curious, the residential building up front, what is that used for strictly residential or is there an office in there?
It's not used as residential. It just looks like a residential. I wanted to describe it somehow. So this is what it looks like out front. It's used for the commercial building, commercial offices. So no, it's not a residential. It's not a residential use. It's a residential looking building.
All right. And so you're adding some striping for parking right behind that?
Yep.
Are they doing anything with the pavement that's towards the road because it's kind of rough?
We weren't proposing it. You're talking about out front here?
Yeah, it looks more like stone in some spots. I mean, I know it's pavement, but it's kind of beat up a little bit. If you could chat with him about that.
Like out here.
Yes,
I can talk to him about repaving it up front.
I would appreciate that. I have no other questions. Neil, anything?
No, I'm all set.
Steve, any questions or comments?
All set, thank you.
Thank you. That'll end this portion of the meeting. Tim, thank you for that presentation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a sketch plan review again. This is for the property at 6225 East Taft Road. This is a proposed construction of 2 buildings for CHA Consulting, who is representing the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening. Brian Bouchard with CHA Consulting, attending on behalf of the owner, who is also the applicant for the sketch plan at 6225 East Taft Road. I am also going to share my screen here. Hopefully, there we go. So this proposed site is at the corner of Topman Road and East Taft Road. It's approximately 8 acres, almost half of which is actually in the rear is wetlands. It lies within the GC district and, as you know, is along the commercial side of the corridor of East Taft Road. Currently, there are no improvements to the western portion of the site that I'm circling with my little hand here, with exception of the small asphalt area along the street, which I believe was used for display area for the old performance motorsports performance shop that was there previously. On the site is the existing building that the owner purchased, which is now occupied by United Rentals in the rear, and Barks and Rec, which is a doggy daycare and grooming center in the front, which you've seen applications for in the past. Obviously, this area is attractive to sort of the smaller businesses along the street, you know, the 5,000 to 10,000 square foot range for a owner-occupied smaller business, and based on some significant interest for available commercial space, the owner is proposing to construct 2 flex space buildings that would accommodate any variety of those types of uses. One of which would be just over 5,000 square feet on the west side of the site, and then between that building and the existing building would be a second flexible commercial space just under 10,000 square feet. These buildings would be established so that they could be divided based on the internal layout need of certain tenants in the future. The back area would be more for the service and deliveries, dumpster location and employee parking. Out front, we would improve the streetscape to provide approximately 42 spaces. If you were to count just the spaces that are being added to the site, that would accommodate those commercial uses. Just a couple other things. We did submit the site plan to Onondaga County DOT for their cursory review of the proposed curb cut that we're showing on East Taft Road. I did get a letter just today that I can forward to the board and to Steve for circulation. They've reviewed the project, but based on some improvements that they've recently made to Taft Road and some of the adjacent driveways, they won't allow the full access, but they did provide their contingent approval for a right-in, right-out access at this location. Basically, just to provide another point of ingress and egress. And understanding the fact that the site does still have a full access driveway that would still remain onto Topman Road. We also submitted preliminary floor plans just to give you sort of a space layout and where the exits and entrances are, as well as preliminary exterior elevations that show what the look of the building is intended to be. This shows, some of the storefront areas with canopies over those entrances that, as I said, could be divided into different spaces based on the tenant needs. And we will work to get you the building materials identified in our subsequent submissions as well. Some of the other technical items that we'll work on in terms of the design would be, as I said, the New York State DOT, so bringing this driveway into conformance with their contingent approval for a right-in, right-out driveway. We're also working with the New York State DEC to identify the impacts to the wetland buffer. We won't be impacting the wetland itself, but potentially getting a permit for impacts up to potentially 50 feet of that wetland buffer. We'll also be developing, we provided a grading plan in this set, but developing a stormwater pollution prevention plan since the site disturbance will exceed 1 acre for Mark's review there. And we also did, from Heidi, receive today a cursory review from the fire department. They had concerns with the availability of fire water and the proximity of the building, the nearest fire hydrant. We'll be over to code to figure out what we would need to do to satisfy the fire department comments for both fire water and fire hydrant, as well as showing their fire apparatus response with turning movements into and out of the site with that new driveway. We'll also look to provide you guys with a lighting plan and landscape plan, but really just as far as the conceptual site plan goes, wanted to get any feedback that you might have as we move forward with refinement of the design as we go along here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And just for the record, the planning board just received this information, so I don't think any of us have had a good chance to do a kind of a thorough review before me, but I know you were interested in getting going, so we put you on the agenda. So with that, I'll go through the board and see if there are any questions at this point. Mr. Rosito?
No questions other than it looks good. It'd be nice if there was a way of having some sort of green space between Taft Road and the buildings, but looks like it's all asphalt all the way, even up against the buildings. But it's more commercial, so.
Yeah, I mean, not to interrupt, I think, there is an opportunity, I think, out in front. We did have some plantings that were required for the previous occupancy of the change of use, and maybe we would look to continue that theme at least between the green space that we have between the parking spaces and the road. There's probably all of 30 feet at least there, even though it's, the property line's in the middle. So we can definitely make sure that that green space between the parking area and the road is planted in a similar fashion that we did for the other street trees that we provided, and then see if we can carry some of that, alongside of the buildings as well. So I'll look into that too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Abbey?
Well, actually, I was just going to mention about possibly some front landscaping at or near the road part. And were you planning on any signage up front by Taft Road?
Signage will be something that we'll definitely have to address for the board as we move forward. I know that we got the existing pylon sign approved when the uses changed. It has a United Rentals sign on top and it has the Bark and Rec sign. So I'll talk with the owner about what his intent is for signage. I think since we don't have any secured tenants, it's really just for, marketing purposes and getting the site ready for those types of tenants to move in. Maybe we could provide you with, a compliant sign that's either shared with the pylon or either building mounted, so that we can show what the size and locations of those signs would be. So I'll make a note of that as well.
I noticed on your elevation, it shows trees out in front of the buildings themselves, basically. So that being the case, seems like that would block the signage on the building itself.
Correct. Yeah. This isn't, an architect's, I guess, just attempt at sort of the look and feel and scale, mass and scale of the building. And it would look very boring, I guess, without decorations of the people walking and some of the trees. So as we refine this too, I think you'll find that maybe it matches more in reality with the space that we have, with perhaps the trees along the street and whatever we can incorporate within the green spaces that we have.
Just wanted to mention that ahead of time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Mr. Snyder?
Well, we can't really discuss the parking situation until we really know what the tenants are. I mean, if the tenants are not a lot of activity, then we probably have plenty of parking. But that right now, the way it's laid out, I would not want to be the guy that's got to plow the snow, because I see no place to put the snow except way at the end of where the driveway goes out, the right in, right out. So you might want to look at whether we create a couple of islands or something that would be where we put the snow, or you may just end up blocking a number of parking spots while we're in the snow season. Other than that, no comment at this point.
I'll just piggyback on that. I'm suspecting we're not going to know who the tenants are as we go through this process.
No, I'll say though, so there isn't any tenants in mind. It's really just the availability of commercial space. Like I said, catering to that sort of owner occupied small business within the area, similar to, the types of businesses that you see along here. So some of the things that were discussed is something like an insurance agent, similar to like United Rentals, which is in the back, having, maybe like a plumbing supply, like you see with the hardware store down the street. Those types of uses that would occupy a smaller space like that.
So yeah, if you can address from Mr. Snyder and the rest of the board question on snow storage next time we get together, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Mr. Bloss?
No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Maurizio?
I'm all set. Thank you.
And then I'm going to also jump on the landscaping that's been talked about a couple times. I was going to say I'm going to be interested in seeing the landscape package, especially in this area. We've been kind of paying attention to that and trying to improve the landscape along Taft Road. So good to know that you've got some space there, and I'm looking forward to seeing that part of it. Other than that, the overall project does look nice to me as well. Mr. Jermaine, anything?
All set for now. Thank you.
Mr. Procopio?
All set. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that'll conclude this agenda item. We'll move on to the next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is for the property at 5827 McKinley Road. This is SSC Cicero LLC. This is a proposed ground-mounted solar facility. Just like the last project, the planning board just got the information on this, so this is more just an informational kind of thing for the applicant. They were anxious to be on the agenda, so that's why we're here tonight. And with that, I'll open it to the applicant.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for listening to us on our project this evening. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do today is just go over an overview of the site plan. Then I'm going to turn it over to my business associate, and he's going to present a short video and then get into some engineering specs. So in short, we're entering, let me zoom in a little bit. So here's the Mckinley Road. We enter right here. Here's our access road. We'll have our point of common coupling with the utility company right here. And we're going to span the access road, and we'll have 5 poles that are required from the utility company to be installed. These actually are utility-owned poles. And then from there, we're going to go underground. And we go underground back to this equipment pad. And then it essentially follows the access road to the rear of the site to the second equipment pad. Also, in regard to the front of the site, we're going to install some plantings here to make sure that nobody can see the site from McKinley Road, and these homeowners here as well. We're also going to install plantings east of this access road to do the same thing, and also to the south of the southeast corner of the site. I'd like to note that we plan on keeping all the trees in this 50-foot side and rear setback lines. So there should be a natural vegetative buffer around most of the facility. Where there is not a natural vegetative buffer, we will be these panels are single access trackers, which means they follow the sun east to west throughout the day. These trackers do not produce any audible noise. And the reason we do trackers, the main reason is in New York, obviously there's a lot of snow. This allows the snow to dissipate much more quickly than fixed tilt. If you'll also notice, our fence line follows closely around the entire facility and does not encroach upon the 25-foot wetland buffer. And importantly, it's only a 25-foot wetland buffer, not a 100-foot wetland buffer, because these are federal wetlands and not state. And I think that is all I have on the site plan. And I'll turn it over to Dave to.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Can all of you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what I'm going to show you is the ultimate product, the end result. So I've got a brief drone flyover of a project that we're working on right now, not in the state of New York, but in Virginia. And it should give you a very good feel for what the project will look like once it's completed. If I can share my screen. Do you see the image?
We do, yes.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to hit play. So what you're seeing here is the exact same product. These are around 400-watt solar panels, and you can see that they're mounted to single-axis trackers. So this is actually, the drone is flying north, right? So the trackers are going to move in an east-west orientation. What you notice here are access roads in between the panels for operations and maintenance. And then at the end, we'll see an inverter, which converts the DC power to AC power. But this is essentially the exact product, exactly what we're proposing on the property. With exception of what I want to point out on this property is a lack of vegetative growth. So we would have, you know, and this one will be as well, but it will be very green, very lush, as will our project. You can see what's nice about the racking system is that it allows for undulation in the topography while still working. You can see how in these areas here, the tracking system is actually following the terrain. I thought you'd enjoy that. It's a great depiction of exactly what we're trying to do. You guys have any questions?
That was helpful. Thank you.
How many megawatts is this going to produce?
This section is 100 megawatts.
So these trackers start out looking east and then flatten out to get the southern exposure and then end up looking west. I mean, they don't actually look south.
That's right. Yeah, they stay flat. And when the sun rises in the morning, they'll face east. As it moves across the sky during the day, it'll turn to the west. And then in the evenings, it resets to what you call a stow position. And the stow position is flat. The racking system is actually a very smart system. In the instance of high wind or storm events, the tracker also automatically resets to stow so that it doesn't catch wind and have structural issues.
Stow meaning flat, I'm assuming.
Stow is flat, is absolutely flat, yeah.
Is the construction company going to remain there? I see that's kind of blocked out where they are right now up near the front of the near Mckinley.
The existing tenant?
So this,
right.
This part of the,
in this area here.
This area here, they're remaining, and we will be everywhere else. So there's already an existing access road here. We will have to likely apply for a minor commercial driveway permit, but not a curb cut because there's already an existing driveway there.
So this area right here will be the continuation of the current tenant?
I believe they're actually Whitaker Properties is the owner, and I believe it's owner occupied. I don't think there's actually a tenant there. I think it's the current owner. So we are purchasing this property from Whitaker, and they carved out this area for themselves in which they want to remain, and we are in contract to purchase the remainder.
What's the projected life of these units?
So it's an interesting question. The life of the facility will be at least 25 years, pursuant to the New York Sun VETR program, essentially a FIT program where for 25 years you're guaranteed to be part of a program that essentially values the price of energy based on your geography within the state of New York. So it's kind of cool because if you're in different areas, power is worth more or less. So it's pretty efficient in that respect. But what's kind of intriguing too is, these solar panels last longer than 25 years. We don't really know how long these last because some of them that were, put out in the 70s are still, they're still working. So, I would say 25 years is, a good baseline for how long the facility lasts, but, maybe five years more. So maybe up to 30 years.
Well, being the owners of the property is different than a couple other solar farms project, going to be leased properties. So there's a lot of concern at the end of their life, what would happen to the property at that point.
That's a good question. I believe you asked about what will happen to the property after the facility comes to an end. What I personally really think about solar panel is the solar facilities is essentially it's land preservation. We're really just banging some poles into the ground. And, when we leave, we're just going to pull those stakes up. The only thing that'll be, left behind are these small equipment pads that you'll see here and here, which, they're 10 by 40 on here. And so, in terms of preserving land for future generations and just in general, solar is a really good use of land for that purpose. So, in short, when we're gone, you're just going to have an open field. And if we don't touch it, I would imagine it just will turn back into a forest.
Or maybe by that time, the solar would be so efficient, it'd be worth, reworking.
We hope so.
Thank you.
Along that same line of questioning, do you provide a decommission agreement? We've seen those in recent approvals that we've done.
Yes, definitely. We will have a decommissioning plan, which we really just do the same plan for all our sites. What we do is we go get a third-party opinion to determine the cost to remove the solar facility throughout the life of the project. And then we'll get a decommissioning bond, which we pay on a yearly basis. It's about 2% per year of the cost attributable to removal of the solar facility as determined by an independent party. So we'll have this thing here, and you know, we've never had to use it. I don't think we will, but it's also nice to have, you know, for the town and, you know, just comfort in general.
And this doesn't have the solar pack at all on there, the battery packs that store energy?
This isn't going to be a PV plus energy storage facility, although we'd love to. The reason is we don't have an incentive structure in upstate New York any longer for energy storage. So at this point, this is just a PV facility.
Mr. Bloss, have you got anything?
Yeah, I'd like to know if when I was reading some of that material this afternoon, the properties that are adjacent to or close to this facility that they want to build, have those people been notified? Or will they be notified?
I believe pursuant to the bylaws, we have to notify all abutters before the public hearing. And I believe for the application, we actually had to provide an abutters list. So we've provided a abutters list to the planning board, and before the public hearing, we'll be providing notice via mail to all the abutters.
Yeah, I saw that list, and I haven't had it very long, and I skimmed through there, and I would, you know, that was my question. Would you be able to you need to contact these people?
Yes, we're happy to contact them. Normally we do it via certified mail.
Thank you.
Mr. Jermaine, anything at this point?
Yeah, I just like to point out that when you go and you look at the cost for, you know, decommission a plant and all that stuff, and your independent expert who's going to do that, I would ask that you calculate those costs based on what it will cost the town to do it, because the town's a prevailing wage, and it would be, you generally get a whole different set of costs for a town as opposed to, I don't know how your independent expert would do it, but that's something you'd have to keep in mind.
Certainly. You know, we always want to take the local community into account in everything we're doing. And for the decommissioning, we plan to do so as well. What's kind of interesting about the decommissioning is, you know, there's actually a lot of recycle value. So, you know, to your point, most of the cost is actually in labor. And so, you know, here we'll want to make sure, to your point, we take into account the local community, prevailing wages, and all that sort of thing.
And my recollection is that those costs add up pretty significantly.
You know, NYSERDA actually put forth some guidance for this, and I think I would need to look it up, but, you know, I think per 2 megawatts, it was around $75,000, I believe, so, you know, I think that's a good rule of thumb. This would be a 5 megawatt facility, and don't quote me on those numbers, I might be a little off, but, you know, it's probably around 300,000 for the bond. But again, it's, you know, those are just NYSERDA's guidelines. Everywhere is a little different. And so that's why we want to get an independent engineer to chime in to, you know, note those differences and geography, you know, prevailing wages, all those sorts of things.
Thank you. Neil, a public hearing, is that required?
No, it's not.
Sounds
But you
like,
could,
yeah, it sounds like you want to do one.
I think we should.
Yeah, I agree with that.
do you want to give yourself more time to look this over, or do you want to just?
Yeah, I'd say at the next meeting, we'll talk about setting the date for a public hearing, but the planning board will require a public hearing for this and notification to the adjoining neighbors. As long as everybody else agrees.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Mr. Procopio, have you got anything?
I would just point out that this property, like the previous one earlier in the meeting, is in 2 zoning districts. It's both industrial and agricultural. The use is permitted in both of those districts. And I believe the applicant was going to apply the most restrictive setbacks from each of those districts in order to not create any conflict. But I just wanted to point that out to you just so you were aware, in case you had any concerns about that.
Thank you. And like I mentioned on the last agenda item, the landscaping along the road is going to be important for us as well. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, it's my understanding you're buying the property, correct? Hello?
That's correct.
I couldn't hear you.
Yes, that is correct.
So you say you have money in there for decommissioning. My question is, you've had some of these solar sites that have been in existence since the 70s. Have you had the instance where technology's got well enough where you upgrade them and don't dismantle them? And is that a possibility here?
Yeah, that's a really good and just interesting question to me. By the way, the facilities from the 70s aren't our facilities.
Oh, okay.
We do have some facilities all over the state and Mass and et cetera, but no, those are mostly done by the government actually back then. Pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, as technology gets better, I would never say never, right? But as of now, the plan is to stick with, what we've got. And what we've got is single access trackers that are very, very effective in two ways. The first way Dave mentioned is, following the sun, which means that our yield goes up. We can produce more kilowatt hours on a daily basis. And the second one, and kind of more importantly in some ways, is it's really good at shedding snow. And so I don't foresee us really changing out the equipment anytime soon, if ever. And, if that was ever going to happen, we'd of course approach the planning board and share our thoughts and, just discuss if this is something we should be doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? All right, with that, we'll conclude this agenda item for now, and we'll see you next time around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
The last two items are on the agenda are with Cbs Housing. This is for the property at 8697, 8699 Brewerton Road. This is a proposed two-story senior housing complex and a zone change recommendation to the town board. The applicant is with us.
Hey, good evening. This is Ben Gustafson with Hunt Engineers, representing CDS. And then Luz Espiritu Santo with CDS is also on the call here.
Welcome.
Welcome. I'll share my screen and start our presentation. So what we're intending to provide is a phase 2 of our very successful phase off Knowledge Lane. So if you're not familiar, right by the library off Knowledge Lane, this is Meltzer Court and Brewerton Road. This is our phase 1 project, which is completed and fully occupied. I believe we have, is it 30 people on the waiting list right now, Luz?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, we currently have a 30-person wait list.
So we have a 30-person wait list for a 50-unit development. So that is a good indication to us that there continues to be need in the town of Cicero for affordable quality senior housing. So for a phase 2 project, we're intending to develop a piece of property that is across Knowledge Lane. So this property has double frontage on Brewerton Road currently, and then also on portion of Knowledge Lane. It doesn't technically front on Meltzer Court. There's a small sliver of property between us and the public right-of-way. So we're providing a 50-unit building similar to the previous building that we had. A small change to our program. The previous building had a portion of units set aside for individuals with disabilities. This building will continue to provide affordable housing for seniors and also set aside a portion of units for veterans who are in need of housing. specifically through the Homeless Housing Assistance Program. So it'll be, I believe it's 35, is it 35 units of standard senior housing loos and then 15 of veterans, that's correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
15 units will be set aside for the veterans.
So in approaching the project, obviously the first phase was pretty successful. So we looked to incorporate a lot of those same features as far as the number of parking spaces, providing the sidewalk access, connecting over to Knowledge Lane so we can continue to have the integration of the library so residents can continue to go back and forth from the library. One of the interesting things with this site is, well, which side is really the front of this building? You know, there's a lot of traffic on Brewerton Road, and then we have the library here. So what we ended up doing was a little bit unique of an orientation. So we faced what would be traditionally the rear of the building towards the library. So we have the garden that is at the library. We can also provide some area in the rear of our building to sort of connect all that. And residents can use this exit out of the building and connect to the library. And we did look at, I'll pull up an image here, the back of the building. So we also wanted to make sure that the back of the building had a similar attractiveness as the front, given that it's going to be seen. So we sort of highlighted some of the center pieces of the rear of the building to make it look like a second front there. And then this will allow for a lot of buffering from Brewerton Road. That was one of our concerns, was making sure that we had a lot of space from the state route there. Make sure it's as quiet as possible for the residents. It gives us some more space for some plantings, but a lot of what we're looking to do is do some meadow in this area. So there's an existing meadow over a good portion of the site. The front part of the site is occupied by a car dealership. And we're going to be returning a lot of that to a meadow. So something similar to this type of planting mix here, like a wildflower meadow seed mix with some trees to provide some landscape buffering, but really going in sort of concert with the feel of Brewerton Road now, letting that meadow continue to prevail there. As far as stormwater management, the site sort of drains to the northwest and the southeast corners. So we'll maintain those drainage patterns. I think our primary stormwater facility is going to be in the northwest, where we can connect to the existing storm sewer system that's in that area. We also have done some infiltration testing and found some very positive infiltration in this corner. We have a lot of impervious that's on this eastern side. And so we may or may not have a small facility on here to treat some water, but we'll also be sort of taking advantage of the existing impervious and allowing some of the potentially, runoff to go through this field area in its existing drainage condition. Of course, working with the town's engineer and make sure we comply with all the speedies and SWIP requirements. Lighting, parking styles is going to be very similar to the current building that's out there. Part of this project is a zone change. So it's currently a general commercial GC zone, which does not allow for apartments at this time. So in discussion with the town, it seemed the best course of action would be to establish a PUD in this property. When we talked with the town board, one of the board members asked if we'd look into extending current PUD. So across the street, this is all an existing PUD, and we look through the town code, and it's a very similar process, with the one exception that at the end, you don't necessarily have to file a new local law. It just extends existing PUD. So we'd be very open to that as well if the town was all in agreement that that was the best course of action. So essentially taking this PUD and just extending its boundaries to include our parcel. Try to give you an overview. I don't want to keep droning on. If you have specific questions, I can jump to those as well.
Thank you. Mr. Rosito, any questions? at this point?
The number of spaces for veterans, that's set in stone. Could that be increased or decreased?
Currently, I'm sorry. Sorry, Ben.
No, Luz, you go ahead. You're the program expert.
Yeah, no, we have 15 units set aside and we're gonna be applying for ECHI and HAP funding. So we are not allowed to decrease or increase the number of units, but we do give preference to veteran applicants for the other units.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Abbey? Chuck? We'll skip Chuck and go to Mr. Snyder.
Yeah, I personally took a tour of the first facility. It was very nice. My current income would not allow me to live there, which probably is good for the neighborhood. The thing that I would want to have you all compare is I do not know this to be a fact, but I have heard that there have been situations where there has been parking on the road because there wasn't enough parking in the facility space that was provided. So if you could give us some numbers on the current parking lot, if you've had some times where there's been more usage, and I don't mean the grand opening, that would probably be true. But if you'd look at the parking for us and make sure that we have enough. I think you're providing like 46 parking spaces. That to me sounds low, at least from the people that I saw when I was there doing a review. They did not appear to be people that wouldn't possibly be driving. So if you could just give us some background on the current situation, that'll help me with this. And the other thing, of course, we got from the fire department concern, hopefully that we would be smart enough to address this from Knowledge Lane, not from Route 11, as far as addressing the address of the space. I'm sure that can't be something very difficult to do.
Yeah, I thought that was a very poignant recommendation, and we would intend to pursue that as well.
Other than that, great job.
Thank you. Regarding the parking situation, I will reach out to our property management company. As far as a parking issue, we haven't been made aware of that, but I will certainly reach out to our property management company and I will circle back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Abbey, are you with us now? Chuck? Mr. Bloss?
My only question was also on the parking, and I know a lot of senior citizens because I am one, and so many of us have two vehicles, and you know, I'm not familiar with how they determine how many parking spaces that they're going to need on these buildings, but I would, if they could address that, I would, you know, feel better. But my personal feeling is they need a little more parking.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Maurizio?
No questions right now, thanks.
And then, yeah, I was going to bring up the parking as well. It does seem a little bit light on number of spots. It does look like the apartments are all one bedroom except for maybe one. Is that correct?
Yeah, one or two bedroom.
One or two bedroom. So, you know, I'm thinking
one on each floor.
One on each floor.
Yep.
I'm thinking the residents that do have cars and then visitors, it just seems like that is kind of a tight number of parking spots for that many units. So anything you can help us with on that, I would appreciate. And then I had a question on the parcel, the little sliver that you don't own along Meltzer. It just seems kind of like that should be part of your parcel. Have you looked at acquiring that? For it to just sit there, I'm not sure who's going to maintain it. It seems like a lost parcel.
I don't believe we've pursued that parcel. I don't know if it's the same people that we're purchasing our parcel from that even own that.
I don't think so. I think you're right on that. I think that one shows that it's owned by the campus people. And I think you have a driveway that goes to that house that goes along that. Just seems like something ought to happen with that now, if it's possible.
Yeah, we can look at that. When we go for funding at the state level, they look pretty hard at any acquisition costs to make sure that those are all reasonable and required. So that may be a challenge, but it's something that as a development team we can discuss.
Yeah, I get that, but we have to look at good planning too, right? You have
Understood.
that sliver just sitting there now, where nothing will ever happen with it, who's gonna maintain it? I think I would like to have those answers in place, because our job is good planning. And then zoning, you talked about that a little bit. You know, I'll leave that to you folks in the town board as to which way you want to pursue that. An extension of PUD I'm fine with, or doing a new PUD, so however you want to handle it, I think I'm comfortable with that. Mr. Jermaine, have you got anything else anything at this point?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Procopio?
Yeah, I'm all set at this time.
Mr. Eber, are you with us yet?
Yeah, I'm back again.
Welcome back. Have you got any questions?
No, we're all set this time, but thank you.
All right. Terrific. I appreciate that presentation. It's great that you've got that kind of interest over there, and certainly a need that we have in the town. So with that, we'll end this agenda item until next time around.
Thank you.
That brings us to board discussion. I know that you all received an email from Heidi that the Onondaga Planning Symposium has been canceled because of the coronavirus. The email that she sent does have a link for other options for training, so keep that in mind as we move into the new year. Anybody have anything else? Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.